There is a habit hiding inside people who are otherwise disciplined. It doesn't look like failure, it looks like effort. You check the portfolio, you read the article, you move money into savings and feel for a moment like a different person, someone finally in control, and then within days something quietly pulls the money back out, a purchase that felt urgent at the time and forgettable a week later. This isn't a lack of willpower, it's a scheduling error, and it starts long before any bank account existed. Picture two calendars hanging side by side. One belongs to a hunter. It only tracks today. Is there food? Is there danger? Is there enough right now to survive until dark? The other belongs to a grower, someone who plants in spring and doesn't expect anything back until autumn, sometimes years later if it's an orchard. Two completely different instruments built for two completely different jobs. And here is the quiet catastrophe. Most people are trying to grow an orchard while reading the hunter's calendar every single morning. The hunter's calendar was never wrong. For most of human history, it kept people alive. If a resource looked scarce, the correct move was to take it immediately before someone else did. That instinct isn't a flaw, it's inherited discipline from ancestors who didn't have the luxury of patience. But an investment account doesn't obey the hunter's rules, it obeys the grower's rules. And when the two calendars get crossed, something strange happens. Every small feeling of there might not be enough gets answered with a purchase, not a plan. Here's the part almost nobody says out loud. That crossed wire isn't occasional. It's constant, and it's already shaping decisions this week, not someday this week. Every time a purchase gets justified as well-earned or just this once. Each one of those moments quietly resets the compounding clock back to zero, not because the money is gone, because the pattern reinforces itself, and patterns are what determine the next 20 years, not any single transaction. Think about how ordinary this looks from the outside. A subscription renews, and instead of canceling it, there's a small internal negotiation. I'll deal with it next month. A sale appears with a countdown, and something in the chest tightens slightly, as if the item itself might disappear forever. None of these moments feel dramatic. That's exactly why they work. The habit sabotaging long-term growth was never designed to look like a crisis. It was designed to look like a completely reasonable, one-time exception, every single time. Growers understood something the hunter's calendar can't compute. A seed does almost nothing for a long, unglamorous stretch of time. No fireworks, no proof, just root, alone in the dark, doing work no one can see. Anyone judging that seed by the hunter's clock would call it a failure and dig it up, which is, statistically, exactly what most people do to their own financial decisions the moment the reward doesn't arrive on schedule. So the real question isn't how do I save more, it's which calendar am I reading right now? Because the moment scarcity is felt even quietly, even about something as small as a coffee or a subscription, the hunter's clock takes over the decision and the body doesn't ask permission. It just acts the way it was built to. Watch what happens the next time restraint is required. A cost gets framed as risk to survival. If I don't get this now, I'll regret it. And the nervous system responds almost exactly as it would to an actual threat. Breathing shifts slightly. Attention narrows the same way it would facing real danger. That narrowing is the whole story. Under narrowed attention, long-term thinking becomes physically difficult, not just unlikely. This is measurable, and it's the same mechanism that once kept people from starving, repurposed, badly, for grocery aisles and checkout screens. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The instinct doesn't ask whether the threat is real. A flash sale, a countdown timer, a low stock warning, none of these are famines, but the ancient calendar can't tell the difference between an actual shortage and a page engineered to imitate one. So it responds the same way every time. Take it now, worry about tomorrow later. And later becomes the most expensive word in personal finance. There's a second layer to this that almost nobody mentions, and it changes everything. The brain doesn't just react to scarcity, it rewards the reaction. The instant relief of problem solved after a purchase produces a small chemical payoff, a tiny sense of resolution. That relief has nothing to do with the size of the purchase. A $5 impulse buy can produce the same sense of resolution as a $500 one because the reward isn't about the item, it's about silencing the alarm. Which means the habit isn't really about spending at all. It's about ending discomfort as fast as possible, using whatever tool is closest, and money is almost always the closest tool. Now here's the recontextualization, the piece most people never connect. The grower's calendar isn't slower because patience is a virtue. It's slower because growth is mathematically exponential, and exponential curves are almost flat at the start. A seed planted today looks identical to a seed planted 5 years ago for the first several seasons. The difference only becomes visible near the end. The curve bends upward violently, all at once, after looking like nothing for years. Anyone reading the hunter's calendar gives up exactly at the point where the curve is about to bend. That's the trap, not laziness, not ignorance, timing blindness. The habit sabotaging results isn't overspending in general, it's specifically abandoning the plan during the flat part of the curve, the part that looks like it isn't working right before it starts to. And the flat part lasts longer than most people expect. It can stretch across years that feel completely uneventful, no visible reward, no proof anything is happening, just a number that barely moves. That silence is where almost every plan quietly dies. Not in one dramatic decision, but in 100 small ones, each justified in isolation, each invisible to the person making them. There's an old idea, older than modern finance, that fits this perfectly: the discipline of the unfinished. Ancient Stoic thinkers built an entire practice around tolerating incomplete outcomes, training the mind to stay steady in a process before the result exists yet. Not blind optimism, structured patience. They understood that judging a process by how it feels in the middle is almost always a mistake, because the middle is designed to feel uncertain. That discomfort isn't a warning sign. It's the actual texture of anything that eventually compounds. This is where the two calendars finally meet. The hunter's calendar measures a moment. The grower's calendar measures a season. Neither one is wrong on its own terms, but only one of them was ever built to grow something. And the habit that quietly drains progress isn't really about weak discipline. It's about using the wrong instrument to read a situation that has nothing to do with survival. So the fix isn't more motivation, and it isn't another spreadsheet. It's recognizing in the exact moment a purchase starts to feel urgent, which calendar is being consulted. The hunter's calendar says, take it now, the moment is now, scarcity is now. The grower's calendar says, this season looks empty because it's supposed to check back after it's had time to do nothing visibly for a while. Once that distinction is visible, something shifts, not willpower, recognition. The urge to buy doesn't have to be obeyed or fought, it just has to be correctly identified as an ancient alarm ringing for a threat that isn't actually in the room. Left alone, unanswered, it fades within minutes. Fed, it becomes a habit that resets the clock every time. This is the actual difference between people whose money compounds and people whose money keeps starting over. It was never about income or luck or knowing the right investment. It was about which calendar got trusted at the moment restraint was required. Two people with identical salaries can end up in completely different places, not because one is smarter, but because one learned to recognize the alarm for what it is, and the other kept answering it. And here's the part worth sitting with. Somewhere right now, there's a decision waiting, small, easy to justify, feeling urgent for no real reason. The instinct behind it is thousands of years old and was never built to understand compounding. The account that finally grows isn't the one that avoided every temptation. It's the one that learned, calmly, again and again, to check the calendar before reacting to the alarm. Because the orchard was never actually slow, it was just being read by the wrong clock, and the season it's waiting on may already be closer than it looks.